So Far Cry 6 is right around the corner. Everyone's getting hyped. Everyone's talking about these trailers because of these actors and all this movie stuff. And again, you guys know on my channel, I've talked about these movie gamers and these people caring so much about movies and caring about games, having these intricate stories that they actually don't know anything about or care about after playing the game. After a day or two, they forget all about this story they thought was oh so great and don't even remember half of it. Now me, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't enjoy the Far Cry games, because obviously I do. I'm going to get the new Far Cry. Yes, the story is somewhat of importance, but mainly I want the game because of all the gameplay. People try to hype up Far Cry 3 and that like Far Cry 3 was great because of Vaz, but if you ever played Far Cry 3 and really paid attention to it, Vaz was barely in the game. The overall story was not that great, and if we're being real, Vaz wasn't even the worst villain. There's a guy in Far Cry 3 named Buck who was sitting there actually for YouTube purposes, I'm going to say graping people. Yeah, they literally had a guy that was graping someone, and I don't even mean just graping people. He was also what's the word, let's just say he was living an alternative lifestyle. So you got to imagine back in that time, which wasn't that long ago, but a lot of things have changed since then. They were allowed to make a alternative lifestyle living villain who was graping a man, and no one seemed to care. Matter of fact, it's actually something that kind of goes under people's radar when they play the game. Most people probably play Far Cry 3 multiple times, or hearing me say this for the first time and saying, when did this happen? Go play the game again. You claim to love the story, but you don't know anything about it. You claim to love Vaz, but all you do is like these images of Vaz. You like the feel that Vaz gave you, but you probably can't remember half the things he said other than, do you know the definition of insanity? You probably don't know the intricacies of the story, and that's why so many people are hyping up Far Cry 6. This new villain played by Anton Castillo, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Everyone's hyping him up because he's in a bunch of different TV shows that everybody likes. And I'm going to be real with you. I watch TV and all, but I mainly watch comedies. I like laughing. And yeah, I watch dramas and violence from every now and again, but I mainly just stick to comedy. So if you're not in a comedy, I probably don't know too much about you. But I'm not taking away from this man's acting chops or anything that he does. I'm sure he'll do a good job in the role, but let's be real. Game stories, they're not that great. They're not that well written half the time. So unless this game really was dedicated to its plot, I don't really see him doing too much with this role. I mean, it's only so much an actor can do. If they don't have the lines, they can deliver a great role as much as they can, but if what's happening in the story and everything isn't helping them, then they can only do but so much. So why am I bringing all this up? Because look, Far Cry 6 has some great gameplay. I haven't played it yet, but I'm talking about just looking at it. And if you played any other Far Cry games, they're introducing so many new mechanics. There's a whole new way you level up. The perk system's gone. There's so many different new activities, evolutions on old systems like the bases. And there's a lot of different things that I'm looking forward to. There's even like an armor system now to replace the perk system. So I'm looking forward to playing the game. And yes, again, the story will be something that I'm going to be following, because I also want to do a review on it. Don't hold me to that, but I might do a review. So I'm going to be paying attention to this story. But everyone's hyping up these games nowadays for plots and stories. But I'm going to point something out that Ubisoft and other studios have been doing that actually makes for bad stories. And I'm going to use Far Cry 6 and other games as an example. So you might be saying, man, you haven't even played the game. How do you know this game is going to have a bad story? Well, I'm not saying it will have a bad story, but more than likely it will, because of the simple fact that you can interchange your protagonist. You could be male or female. I know a lot of people today try to act as if males and females are not different and they don't behave differently, but they do. Men and women are not the same. Men and women in roles will not act the same. So when you have a male and a female role in a game and you can just be whichever one you want, the writers would have to basically write a blank character, or basically just decide that the character is going to be male. That's what they mostly do. They write a male character, but then just put a female in the role of a male character. Because without doing that, because some reason being a man is just the default, I guess, state of being for some people. If they were to write a character that behaves feminine and then you put a man in that role, it's going to be very awkward. Most people are more accustomed to women being in manly roles for some reason. I don't know how that happened, but that's more normal than a man being in a female role. So this whole fact that you can change the character is going to lend for the game not having a decent story to begin with. Far Cry to me hasn't had a great story in, well, forever. It never did. But this is going to just make it drive the point home even further that these people that push stories so much, they don't even know anything about how to write a story. And what I'm talking about is the gamers, not so much the game creators, although they play a role in that. These people that sit here and care about plot so much and talk about how great stories are, they don't even see from a mile away how a story is probably going to be jacked up before the game even comes out, because again, men and women are different. And I'm gonna give you some examples of what I mean. So another Ubisoft game, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I think a lot of people, including myself, will say that the actress who played Cassandra did a better role than the guy who played Alexio. However, if you played Assassin's Creed Odyssey, let's just ignore the obvious that there weren't that many, if any, female Spartans. It's kind of odd that you're even able to be a female Spartan. It's even odd that a female is able to do all these things in the world during this time period. Let's ignore all that. If we're just going off of kind of how things are written in that game, the fact that you can be male or female, you could be gay or straight, you could do whatever you want, and it seems like the character's just some plaything to mess around with. And I'm gonna tell you why they probably did that. A lot of people may not realize that they're trying to get women to be into games, and I'm all for women to be into video games. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But if you've ever studied, or you can go look online of studies of women, or let's say little girls and how they play, you could go see these different studies that show that women interact with objects different than men. Men are very strict, or males are very strict. Little boys, if you ever seen studies of girls playing with dolls or boys playing with action figures, they do these studies on children to see how males and females typically behave. Males typically stick to a, let's say, logical script, whereas females, they essentially just make things do whatever they want them to do. And we can see that in real life. I'm not trying to make this a whole study about the male and female dynamic, but if you see in normal life, adult men typically have a structure to their behavior. They have a structure to everything. They use what we call logic. Women, not saying they don't use logic, they use more of their emotions and feelings, and they would rather want things to just do things than things make sense when they do them. So that's why you have these weird roles a lot of times in games where characters can just be in and out, male or female, and apparently this is supposed to just fit. Now, of course, there are games that write this well, where they write characters to be pretty much blank images of the player. That's a little bit different. We're not talking about stories like that, because the story is more about everyone else but the main player. When the story is supposed to be around the main character, you have to make a decision. Is this character going to be a male or female? Because that will change how things are perceived in the world and how things are interacted. Again, going back to Cassandra and Alexio, I would say personally, it makes more sense just aesthetically looking that Alexio would be the villain, because it kind of looks awkward if Cassandra is the one going around smashing heads and she's high off of whatever magic juice Alexio is. You know, in my version of the game, I played as Cassandra, but I've seen the cutscenes where she's the villain and it looks weird. But Cassandra also just being able to do things that doesn't make sense for a female to do in this time period or any time period also doesn't make sense either. So it's kind of like they didn't know what they wanted to do. And a lot of people say Assassin's Creed Odyssey had a great story. It's entertaining, sure, but does it make much sense? No. Now, let me give you an example of a game that I really like, I really love actually, and you play as a female, and that game is The Life is Strange. In The Life is Strange, you play as a character named Max. She's a girl. She has these powers. I don't want to go too deep into the story because I don't want to spoil anything for you. I know the game's kind of old, but that game is really good, and it's mainly about its story, so if I tell you what it's really about, I'm going to be spoiling for you. Let me just tell you this. You can't interchange Max with a boy. It wouldn't make sense. Max has to be a girl for the way the story is written. The things that Max is going through and the way Max shows emotion, if a man were to do that, it would not make sense. And I know someone's going to say you cannot marginalize or put men in a box. I'm a man. Yes, I can. I can tell you, generally speaking, men do not act anything like how Max acts in Life is Strange. And if you replace Max with a male model, as in male polygon model, it will look awkward. There's a scene in the game that I don't really want to spoil, but it's near, a pivotal point in the game where, let's just say, Max is in trouble. Let me tell you the emotions I had during the scene. I was scared for Max. I wanted Max to get out the situation, but again, Max is a female, and likely she couldn't just power her way out of this because she's a girl. And not only is she just a girl, she's a normal girl. So she's not an MMA fighter. She's not a bodybuilder. She doesn't participate in the strong women's contest. She's just a normal, everyday high school girl. she can't really get out this situation. Max is screwed, and I was scared. Now, let's say Max was not a girl. It was a boy. It was a teenage boy, average teenage boy. My attitude would be different. My attitude would be someone needs to tell this guy to get up and beat the crap out of whoever's doing whatever they're doing to this person. Whereas with Max, it was more like someone needs to save Max. See, the reason why my emotions change depending upon which scenario we're in is because, well, that stuff matters. So again, to tie it back into Far Cry 6, when people say that things like being able to choose if you're male or female is great for player choice, it is great for player choice when you're talking about games like Fallout, where things don't really matter. But interesting enough, Fallout 4, even if you played as male or female, let you, it kind of altered things. If you were the male, you were a soldier. If you were a woman, you were a lawyer, and you were the mother and not the father. So they at least changed it because they understood men and women are different. Or if you go to other Fallout games, then where your character doesn't talk and doesn't really interact with people out, that much, then those games are a little bit different. Because like I said, they're written differently, where everyone else kind of is telling the story and you're just kind of the, do boy or do girl. You just kind of do what they tell you to do. You don't really say too much of nothing. I know you made dialogue choices before anyone says it, but it's not really the same if you pay attention to the story. So my point is that things like sex matter in stories. So when you go to Far Cry 6 and everyone's hyping up this new villain, that's to distract you. Yes, the new villain is going to probably be the lead reason why most people play the new Far Cry 6 for the story, because Far Cry somehow got away with being this game known for great villains because of one villain, and that was Vaz, who was barely in the game, who died pretty early in the game. Does anyone else remember that? Because I remember that. I remember Vaz being there and going away. He wasn't around that much. Now, yes, when he was there, he was impressive, but that's not much to go off of. One villain somehow carried Far Cry all the way up to from 3 to 6, and we know it's more than just 3 Far Cry games. It was like 6 or 7 of them in between that time. I'm probably exaggerating, but it was a lot. It was like Far Cry 3, Blood Dragon. It was a bunch of them in between. And somehow one villain that people actually don't know much about, they just remember certain lines and certain behavior, they let them ride off that coattail for this long. That tells me everything. Y'all don't pay attention to stories in games. And again, I'm not a big advocate for story in games. I think they have their place. I think they're good. They're a good driving reason to play the game. And if you ever played a game that has a great story and great gameplay, it's a match made in heaven. But if I'm being honest, today, we're not only getting games that lack in the gameplay department, but are you guys even paying attention to these stories? These stories are stupid half the time. But maybe that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Am I off? Are you excited for Far Cry 6? Look, I already done pre-ordered it. I already put my money where my mouth is. I was satisfied with the gameplay. I don't care so much about the villain. If the villain is good or not, or if the story makes sense, whether you play as a male or female or not, it doesn't matter, because can I shoot things? Yes. Can I make things blow up? Yes. I'm there. So I didn't care anyway. But I wanted to put this out here because, look, a lot of you guys love your stories so much, but I don't really think you even know why you like them. You just like them because, well, they tell you to like them. But anyway, I'm out. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell to keep track of all my new videos, and I'll see you guys on the next one.